Lairen felt like she was standing at a crossroads. Her life had split into two very different paths. Each path was represented by a boy. On one side, there was Mason. He didn't have much money. He lived in a small trailer at the edge of town. But his heart was big. His kindness was like a warm blanket on a cold day. They shared a love for video games, spending hours exploring digital worlds together. Mason worked hard at a local diner, his hands often rough from work, but they were always gentle when they held hers. He made her laugh, a real deep laugh that came from her soul. With him, everything felt simple and true. He was her best friend. On the other side stood David. David was the complete opposite of Mason. He was wealthy, with a confidence that seemed to shine as brightly as his expensive watch. He lived in a huge house that looked like something from a magazine. He was also a gamer, but his setup was professional, a world away from Mason's old console. David was charming. He knew all the right things to say. He bought her beautiful gifts, things she had only ever dreamed of owning. He promised her a life of excitement and luxury. Being with him felt like stepping into a movie. But sometimes his charm felt a little too perfect, a little too practiced. Choosing felt impossible. It was like choosing between the sun and the moon. Mason was the steady, warm sun that you could always count on. He made her feel safe and seen for who she really was. Their connection was built on shared jokes and quiet moments, on understanding each other without needing to say a word. He saw the real Lairen, the girl who loved old movies and got nervous in crowds. He celebrated her quirks instead of trying to change them. Her heart felt at home with him, settled and calm. She knew a life with him would be filled with genuine happiness, even if it wasn't glamorous. David, however, was the dazzling, mysterious moon. He pulled her in with a force she couldn't explain. He represented a world she had never known, a world of fancy parties and endless possibilities. He made her feel special, like she was the only girl in the world. But this feeling was fragile. It depended on his mood, on his approval. It was a thrilling but unsteady feeling. Lairen was drawn to the excitement he offered, the promise of a life less ordinary. She wondered what it would be like to leave her simple world behind for his sparkling one. The choice weighed heavily on her, a constant hum of confusion in her mind. Her time with Mason was woven from small, perfect moments. It wasn't about grand gestures. It was about the simple things. She loved the way he would bring her a cup of hot chocolate when they played games late into the night. He always remembered she liked extra marshmallows. They would sit on the worn-out couch in his trailer, their shoulders touching, lost in their own little world. They would go for long walks in the park, not saying much, just enjoying the quiet comfort of being together. He would point out different kinds of birds, telling her facts he'd learned from a book. These moments were priceless. They were real. Mason never tried to impress her with money he didn't have. Instead, he impressed her with his heart. For her birthday, he didn't buy her expensive jewelry. He spent a week building her a custom controller for their favorite game, painting it in her favorite colors. He had saved up for the parts, and he was so proud when he gave it to her. Lairen cried when she saw it. It was the most thoughtful gift she had ever received. It was a symbol of their connection, something made just for her. With Mason, she felt cherished for who she was, not for what she could be. Their love was a quiet, steady flame. In contrast, David's world was all about grand gestures. The first time he took her out, it was to a restaurant so fancy she was afraid to touch the silverware. He bought her a designer dress to wear for the occasion. He showered her with gifts, a new phone, expensive headphones, a necklace with a tiny diamond. At first, it was overwhelming and exciting. She had never been spoiled like this before. It felt like living in a fairy tale. David loved showing her off to his friends, introducing her as his beautiful girlfriend. He made her feel like a princess. But the gifts started to feel hollow. They were beautiful, but they lacked the warmth of Mason's handmade controller. They felt like transactions. David would buy her something expensive, and then he would expect her to be happy and grateful, to fit into the perfect picture he was creating. A shadow of control began to creep into their interactions. He would suggest what she should wear, how she should do her hair. He'd get a strange look in his eye if she disagreed. The gifts were not for her, she slowly realized. They were for him. They were props in the perfect life he was building for himself. The first time David showed his true colors, it was terrifying. It happened on a Tuesday night. Lairen was on the phone with Mason, laughing about a funny glitch they had found in a new game. David walked into the room, and his face darkened instantly. He snatched the phone from her hand and hung up. His smile was gone. In its place was a cold fury that made her stomach clench. "Why are you still talking to him?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. "I don't like it. You're with me now. You don't need someone like him in your life." The words were like ice. Lairen tried to explain that Mason was just a friend, but David wouldn't listen. His anger grew with every word she spoke. He started pacing the room, his movements sharp and aggressive. "A friend? Don't be naive, Lairen. He wants you, and he's poor. He's beneath you." He then said something that made her blood run cold. "You need to show me you're serious about us. I want you to call the police. Tell them he's harassing you. Make something up. I don't care. Just get him out of your life." She stared at him, horrified. This wasn't the charming David she knew. This was a stranger. Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head. "No, David, I can't do that. He's done nothing wrong. He's a good person." Her refusal only made him angrier. He grabbed her arm, his grip painfully tight. "Yes, you can. And you will," he hissed, his face close to hers. "You'll do it because you love me. You'll do it to prove you're loyal to me, not to some loser who lives in a trailer." The look in his eyes was pure ice. There was no warmth, no kindness, only a chilling need for control. She felt trapped, a little bird in a cage with a predator. Scared and confused, Lairen felt a wave of deep sadness wash over her. She thought about Mason's kind eyes and easy smile. He would never ever ask her to hurt someone. He would never use fear to get what he wanted. In that moment, the glittering world David had offered her seemed to tarnish. It was all a lie. The beautiful gifts, the fancy dinners, they were just a mask for this ugly, controlling person underneath. She felt a profound sense of loss, not just for her friendship with Mason, but for the dream she thought she was living. Her heart ached with a pain she had never known before. Lairen eventually gave in. She didn't call the police, but she did distance herself from Mason, terrified of what David might do. Their relationship continued, but honestly, the magic was gone. It was replaced by this constant, low-level anxiety. She felt like she was always walking on eggshells, just careful not to say or do anything that might set David off. Their dates were no longer fun, they were performances. She would smile, laugh at his jokes, and pretend everything was perfect. But inside, she felt empty and alone. His house, which once seemed like a palace, now felt like a very beautiful prison. Their days were short and unhappy. David was possessive, constantly checking her phone and questioning who she was talking to. He isolated her from her old friends, claiming they were a bad influence. Her world became smaller and smaller until it was just him. The charming boy she first met was rarely seen. Most of the time, he was moody and demanding. If she didn't answer his texts immediately, he would accuse her of ignoring him. If she wanted a quiet night in, he would get angry and say she was boring. The relationship was a roller coaster of his moods, and she was just trying to hang on. One afternoon, Lairen found herself driving past the park where she and Mason used to walk. On an impulse, she pulled over. She saw him sitting on their bench, staring out at the pond. He looked sad. Her heart broke. She got out of the car and slowly walked toward him. When he saw her, his eyes widened in surprise. He didn't look angry, just hurt. "Lairen," he said, his voice soft. They sat in silence for a few minutes before she started to cry. He didn't ask questions. He just put his arm around her, offering the simple, unconditional comfort she had been missing so much. In that quiet moment, everything felt right again. She leaned her head on his shoulder, breathing in the familiar, comforting scent of him. It was like coming home after a long, terrible journey. "I'm so sorry, Mason," she whispered. "I've been so stupid." He just held her tighter. "It's okay," he said. "I've missed you." They talked for hours, and it was as if no time had passed. They shared a gentle kiss, not passionate or demanding like David's, but tender and full of unspoken understanding. It was a promise of something real, a flicker of hope in the darkness. The brief moment of peace was shattered when Lairen got home. David was waiting for her, his face like a thundercloud. Someone had seen her with Mason at the park and had told him. "Where have you been?" he snarled, his voice dripping with venom. "Don't lie to me. I know you were with him." His rage was terrifying. It was worse than before. He threw a vase against the wall, and it shattered into 1,000 pieces, just like Lairen's remaining hope. He backed her into a corner, his eyes wild with fury. "You think you can just run back to him, after everything I've given you?" He became even more dangerous. His jealousy had turned into something dark and obsessive. The next day, he dragged her to a lawyer's office. He didn't ask her, he told her. He forced her to sign papers. He made her get a restraining order against Mason. Lairen's hands trembled as she held the pen. She felt sick to her stomach. The legal jargon swam before her eyes, but the meaning was clear. She was officially, legally, branding Mason as a threat. She was betraying the kindest person she had ever known, all because she was too scared to stand up to the monster in front of her. Life after the restraining order was a new level of hell. Lairen was more isolated than ever. David watched her every move. She wasn't allowed to go anywhere without his permission. The grand house was no longer a gilded cage. It was a maximum security prison. Her loneliness was a physical ache in her chest. She missed Mason desperately. She missed his laugh, his kindness, his steady presence. She would look at her phone, wanting to call him, but she knew she couldn't. She was trapped, and the walls were closing in tighter every day. David's cruelty grew, his words becoming sharper, his temper more volatile. The final betrayal came a few weeks later. David had been distant and meaner than usual. He told her he was going on a business trip for the weekend. Lairen felt a small sense of relief at the thought of being alone, but her relief turned to dust when she saw a post on social media. It was a picture of David at a party, his arm wrapped tightly around another girl. The girl was one of Lairen's oldest friends, someone she had introduced to David. He was kissing her. In that moment, something inside Lairen snapped. The fear was still there, but now it was mixed with a white-hot rage. She was done being a victim. The image of David with her friend burned in her mind. All the fear that had paralyzed her for months finally gave way to a cold, hard resolve. She was not a possession. She was not a doll for him to play with and then discard. The lies, the control, the cheating, it was all too much. She knew she couldn't stay another minute in that house. Her first thought was of Mason. He was the only one who could help her. He was the only one she trusted. With shaking hands, she found an old pay-as-you-go phone she had hidden away months ago. Her heart pounded in her chest as she dialed his number. She drove to the courthouse first thing in the morning. Her hands were clammy, and her stomach was in knots, but she walked with a purpose she hadn't felt in a long time. She went to the clerk's office and filled out the paperwork to drop the restraining order. Each stroke of the pen felt like she was taking a piece of her life back. It was an apology to Mason, a promise to herself. When the clerk stamped the papers, a huge weight lifted from her shoulders. She walked out of the courthouse and took a deep breath of free air. It was the first step. The next step was calling for help. When Mason answered the phone, Lairen could barely speak. "Mason," she whispered, her voice cracking. "It's me." There was a pause on the other end, and then his voice, full of concern. "Lairen, are you okay? Where are you?" The sound of his voice was all it took for the tears to start falling. "No, I'm not okay," she sobbed. "I need help. Can you please come get me? I'm so scared." She told him what happened, about the restraining order, about David cheating, about how trapped she felt. She didn't leave anything out. She poured out all the fear and misery she had been holding inside. Mason didn't hesitate. "Where are you? I'm on my way. Just stay on the phone with me." He sounded calm and strong, and his steadiness was the anchor she desperately needed. He told her to pack a small bag with only what she needed and wait for him down the street from David's house. As she waited, huddled in the cold, every passing car made her jump. But then she saw his old familiar truck pull up. Mason jumped out and ran to her, pulling her into a tight hug. For the first time in months, she felt safe. She was still terrified, but she wasn't alone anymore. Just as Mason was helping Lairen into his truck, a sleek black car screeched to a halt behind them. David leaped out, his face contorted with rage. "What do you think you're doing?" he screamed, stalking toward them. "You're not going anywhere!" He lunged for Lairen, but Mason stepped between them, shielding her. "Get back, David," Mason said, his voice firm and steady. "She's leaving with me. It's over." David laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. "Over? It's over when I say it's over. She belongs to me." He tried to push past Mason, his eyes wild. The confrontation was tense. David was bigger and fueled by fury, but Mason stood his ground like a rock. He didn't raise his voice or make threats. He just stood there, a quiet, immovable protector. "You don't own her," Mason said calmly. "You never did. You tried to break her, but you failed. Now leave her alone." David looked from Mason's determined face to Lairen's tear-streaked but resolute one. He saw that he had lost. The power he held over her was gone. With a final, hateful glare, he spat on the ground, got back in his car, and sped away into the night. As David's taillights disappeared, Lairen let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. The fear finally began to recede, replaced by an overwhelming sense of relief. She looked at Mason, at his brave, kind face, and her heart swelled with love and gratitude. He had come for her. He had faced down her monster without a second thought. He turned to her, his expression softening. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. She could only nod, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. These were not tears of fear or sadness, but tears of release. He wiped them away with his thumb and helped her into the truck. As they drove away from the house, away from the lies and the fear, Lairen looked over at Mason. The dashboard lights illuminated his profile. He was just a guy who worked at a diner and lived in a trailer, but to her, he was a hero. "I'm so sorry, Mason," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "For everything." He reached over and took her hand, his grip warm and sure. "We'll figure it out," he said, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. Together. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Lairen felt happy. She was free, and she was with the person who loved the real her. She was finally home.